You are listening to the Money Buddy podcast, brought to you by Money and Me, an investor education initiative by PGIM India Mutual Fund.
You know, when I first started working, I already romanticized the idea of retiring. On a busy day, the thought of hanging up my boots and having time to myself and my family, all of it seemed so exciting and peaceful. But when I finished a year of working, I quickly realized all that goes into building a life of retiring peacefully. And the biggest among those building blocks being a sufficient corpus of money to last me the rest of time, right? And then it wasn't as exciting to think about. I got a bit anxious and I felt overwhelmed by the thought of having to quickly create and ensure that this corpus exists by the time I need it. So yeah, retirement can be difficult to figure out financially, especially. But Ajit Menon, CEO, PGIM India Mutual Fund, has some sound advice and fresh perspectives on the different ways we can navigate that phase of our lives and actually prepare for it on this episode of Money Buddy. Let's listen in.
Hi, and welcome back to the Money Buddy podcast with me, Ajit Menon, CEO of PGIM India Mutual Fund. Today, I wanted to talk to all of you on a subject that we do encounter when we discuss our financial futures. And there is a lot of anxiety that people have around this one financial goal, and that's your retirement. And the reason much of the anxiety happens for people is because it's so much into the future that it is sometimes impossible for us to think about all the variables that will affect us, all the things that will happen into that future. And therefore, planning for something like that becomes something ridden with anxiety, I would say. And a lot of research actually shows that we at PGIM India, we do India Retirement Readiness Survey. We've done one in 2019. We've done one also the last year, which we will probably give out a report of maybe a couple of months out this year. But broadly, one of the things that we've seen is that people like to plan for happy outcomes. And retirement for a lot of people is not a very happy outcome. And I'm not talking about professionals like doctors and lawyers who believe that they're not going to retire anytime soon. They can use their practice. They can be in the practice for as long as they wish. But mostly for a lot of people who are working and in corporate life, this is definitely a topic that gives some anxiety in terms of how to plan around retirement. So that's the topic that I'm going to speak to you on. And let me give you a couple of my thoughts straight off. The first thing is that retirement is the only financial goal for which you don't get a conventional loan. Just think about it. You can get a loan for your children's education. You can get a loan for buying a house or buying a car, personal loans if you're looking at going abroad or starting a business. But for retirement, there's no conventional loan. You've got to make up the corpus yourself. So that is one of the very important reasons why we must all be focused on planning for our retirement. Because if there is any gap in that goal, you cannot fill that with a loan. And gaps in every other financial goal can be filled in with a loan. Now, I did tell you that in the research and surveys that we have done, one important aspect that comes out is people like to plan for happy outcomes, financially speaking. And for a lot of people, especially in service, retirement is not a great happy outcome because the image that it conjures up is of relatives who have hung up their boots and are having some sort of health issue or the other. And the whole picture is not so good. Now, a few things that stand out to me that comes from the research that we've been doing on the subject and the reading that we have on the subject across the world is, like I mentioned, the first thing is you've got to frame this as a happy outcome to start with. The second aspect of this is that a lot of people start putting money away for retirement only when they get the surpluses where they believe that all other financial goals are taken care of. Okay, I've got some more surplus. Let me start putting that towards retirement. So it becomes like a fourth and fifth priority, and only when you have a surplus. The third thing is that people who have a secondary source of income, and whatever that secondary source, it could be from their investments, it could be from rent, it could be from some other work that they're doing which gives them an income. Those people feel far more confident about their retirement and about their future financial self because they've got, a secondary source of income. And the last thing that came up in our survey is that people who have come from large families, large joint families, or even large circles of family and friends feel less anxious about their financial futures and financial goals like retirement because sometimes you get the sense that, somebody's got my back. So when you put all of these together, you've got, it's not a very happy outcome. That seems to be one hurdle to cross. 2, how do I get a secondary source of income? Where do I get the surpluses from and how do I prioritize that? And what else can I do to really reduce my anxiety related to this long-term financial goal called retirement? Well, let me tell you something very unconventional related to this goal of retirement. And that is that the risk is never so much about what that corpus is going to be or what that money is going to be that you will have as a kitty when you decide to hang up your boots. Because if you plan it properly with the help of a financial advisor, let me tell you that you can stretch that money for a very, very long period of time. But there is one risk that you have to plan for yourself. And that risk of retirement is really the concentration risk of knowing just one skill for all of your life. What I mean is that you are in a job for 25 or 35 years before you decide to hang up your boots, and it's one kind of skill that you know to do that job. That is the real risk into retirement and not the kitty that you will actually come up with. There are ways and means to plan that kitty. So the first advice that I do have for people when they think about reducing their anxiety around retirement is into your 40s and early 50s, as you're getting closer and closer to that hanging up that boots point, think about what other skills you have and what other skills you can build on from which you can earn some amount of income after you hang up your boots. It could be a passion that you've held for all your life since your teenage years. It could be that you want to be a fitness instructor. It could be that you want to be a yoga teacher. You want to be a translator. You want to be a photographer. So the first advice really for taking care of this anxiety around retirement, I would say, is to think about developing a second and a third skill, possibly from which you can earn some amount of money into those years when you hang up your boots, because it has a huge impact on the corpus lasting you literally forever. As I said, having this secondary source of income ticks all the boxes in terms of the anxieties that people do have, or it also ticks the boxes for what we see from people who feel very confident about their financial futures. Well, lastly, I would say that one very important aspect that I pointed to earlier, which is large families, large friend circles that help you feel less anxious about your financial future, is something that you must really keep your mind on. Having a large friend circle and being connected to family really helps the mental part of that financial future. It keeps you in good health. And let me tell you that when it comes to retirement, which is a long-term goal, and you're thinking about your years, into your 60s, 70s, and 80s and more, the most important aspect that you will encounter probably is your health. And having good health actually helps you reduce the cost of medical, for instance, which is a big cost that hits people into their retirement years. Being purposeful and working at something that gives you joy keeps your health alive and kicking and well into your later years as well. So I wanted to bring you this unconventional advice around retirement. Don't worry about the corpus that you will generate and keep at the point in time that you want to hang up your boots. You can plan for that, very well with the help of an advisor to make it last. That's only one source of your income. But think about your second source of income. Think about developing some skills prioritizing this long-term goal and making this a happy outcome, as I mentioned, is very important. So it's my belief that it's time for us to drop this word retirement from our vocabulary itself and maybe reframe this, as many advisors do actually, as financial freedom. Think about it as your financial freedom goal and plan for it in that way. When you have that little kitty that you have squirreled away for your retirement years, and if you plan for it early enough, as you would have heard many people talk about, getting a good financial advisor to plan your asset allocation and maybe putting that money into 3 little buckets for the first 10 years, for the next 10 years, and for the last 10 years. That's like a 30-year plan that you do. And you look at conservative products to invest in for the first 10 years from which you will withdraw. Look at certain hybrid products for the next 10 years, and look at diversified equity products for maybe the last 10 years. What actually happens is by the time you're running through your money for the first 20 years, the last bucket's got 20 years to compound, and compounding works in your favor for creating wealth. As we know, equities are very good at beating inflation and also getting that compounding benefit over the long term. So your third bucket that you've put into maybe good diversified funds have 20 years to compound, and it'll keep your corpus healthy and alive and well. I would still say that, to get to that, you really need a good financial advisor to help you. I hope that through this podcast, I have been able to maybe change your mind a little bit when you're thinking about financial freedom. Like I said, this is one goal for which you don't get a loan. So you've got to be thinking about it early enough, framing it positively in your mind as financial freedom, thinking about secondary sources of income and creating surpluses by having multiple skills that you can monetize and you can work on right now by the time you want to hang up your boots. And lastly, taking care of your health and happiness and mental well-being. And one little tip and aspect of that is stay connected to friends and family. So there you have it, folks. That's my little take on this subject that has a lot of anxiety for people, and I hope that I've been able to reduce that a little bit for you today. Thanks very much, and see you in the next podcast.
Retirement to financial freedom. Just that reframing of perspectives is so liberating, isn't it? And these are just the kind of insights you can expect on Money Buddy, PGIM India Mutual Fund's very own podcast series led by our CEO, Ajit Menon. I'm sure you're looking forward to the next one, so stay tuned, folks, and revel in all the great conversation through our podcasts. This is Mia Halya signing off.
Money Buddy Podcast, brought to you by Money and Me, an investor education initiative by PGIM India Mutual Fund.